So welcome everybody and welcome Marta on this show of Data Talks. I have with me Marta Bowles, who is the Chief Communication Officer of the premier insight company in the world, Nielsen IQ. Welcome, Marta.
Thank you so much, Wolfgang. So wonderful to be with you. I enjoy presenting or doing podcasts with you, so I'm really looking forward to this.
No, super, Marta. And that's a new addition and a new reflection of some of the things we did together. But also, I want to have the viewers get a sense of your own journey. And you joined Nielsen IQ 3 years ago, after a little more than 3 years ago, but you were appointed as the Chief Communication Officer 3 years ago, after a long, distinguished journey in marketing. So tell us a bit about your journey and what made you decide to join Nielsen IQ.
Absolutely. So I started my journey for the first almost 16 years of my career, or 15 years of my career. I was in grain-based products. I started in the beer industry. And then I spent 11 years at the Kellogg Company when it was the Kellogg Company. Now it's two different companies. What was really exciting about that is in both situations, data and insights were super critical in the decisions we were making. And as I continued to evolve my career, I went actually into direct selling, which also was great to understand about the dynamics between sales and marketing. And then kind of the latter part of my career, I've been working at more data and consumer intelligence companies. I was CMO of a company called Catalina Marketing, which sat on one of the largest retail databases, shopping databases. And it really taught me the opportunity of how to the importance of insights, the importance of things like AI, the importance of personalization. So that is actually what brought me here to NIQ, which, as you mentioned it, is the premier consumer intelligence company. And obviously, we're very focused on innovation. We've innovated over our 102-year existence, but innovation has been kind of core to who we are, and that continuation moves on and really is what attracted me to NIQ.
The fantastic, and congratulations, Marta. As some of the viewers know, we are both the same generation. We're both Gen Xers. We just launched a report on that. We'll come to that later. But Marta, to the younger viewers or to other viewers, how do you see actually generational shifts, or how do you see the younger generation adopt data compared to ourselves?
Oh my gosh. I think, I think it's intuitive to them. I always used to say, probably almost 10 years ago, that we see 10,000 marketing messages a day. I think that's probably 5x now, just because of the various things in our channels that are happening. And obviously, kind of as you noted, there were both Xers, and we kind of grew up in an analog era. We didn't have computers initially when we started working. We had it as we were growing up as things that were evolving, but it was not initially a tool that we were using consistently. As our careers progressed, it became kind of how we communicated, operated on BlackBerries, et cetera. And I think that when you look at the generation today, they're agnostic of thinking of the technology because it's always been present in their lives. So data has never been more important. I think there was a point several years ago that I would have said that data was almost becoming a little bit commoditized because everybody was talking about it. I think what actually shifted that is actually the advent of AI and LLMs, because the reality is high quality data is super critical for AI being effective. So really it's come back into being that currency that really drives it. So data has never been more important. And so when you think about the generations Gen Z expects to have personalized experiences. They want them. They expect them. And all of us do. So therefore, I would say generationally, we kind of crave data and insights. As business people, we crave it for decision, but as consumers, we want a more personalized experience that tailors to us versus kind of what I used to call a spray and pray approach.
Wow, that's great insight. Thank you, Marta. And I liked a lot this currency versus commodity perspective on data. That's a very interesting way to cut it. Marta, you just mentioned the 102-year journey of Nielsen IQ. You were among the team that spearheaded the IPO. And you were in New York at Wall Street, and you rang the bell with Jim Pack, your CEO. How was it actually in New York, and how was that experience?
Oh, it was super exciting. Talk about a milestone and once in a lifetime experience. I'd love to have it happen more than once. Jim has been fortunate enough to do that. But I will say it was really a really interesting journey, because I think the one piece that is so important, obviously the IPO and being in New York on listing day is kind of the culmination of, I'll call it, has been a culmination of our transformation and kind of the journey. But the journey begins again, because obviously now it's more about delivering what we say we do. But the one piece that has been so fundamental to NIQ is, for the last 4 years, we've really been on a transformational journey of really infusing capability, infusing technology, we've always had the best in class, I would call it, human intelligence, but combining that human intelligence with artificial intelligence. So we've actually transformed so much over the last 4 years and what we offer our clients. And they obviously are at the heart of everything that we do. So being in New York and seeing kind of our leaders cheering and all the work that's gone into it was definitely a moment, but it also marked the new journey that we're on, and obviously innovation's at the core of it, and our clients are at the core of it. And so you realize it's kind of a point in time, which is obviously very exciting, but it obviously kind of speaks to kind of where we're going, and obviously making sure that we do what we say we're going to do, and we continue to really be focused on kind of where the marketplace is going and how we can help our clients continue to drive growth, and where can we broaden those opportunities.
So building on that, Marta, tell us a bit of what's, obviously you've been there for the crucial part of that journey, but what are the main milestones and the main changes that happened over the last 3 years during your and Jim's watch, and then also what are the big shifts that will happen in the next few years that your clients can look forward to?
Yeah, I think we obviously invested well over $400 million in kind of technology and in our platform to unify it in all our different databases, where before you'd have different interfaces, we have one unified view. And it's really kind of very powerful. And we call it, kind of our end-to-end view, where we kind of look at our retail data, and we combine that with our panel data to really create not only the element of what happened, but why it happened. So then we can actually be better at saying what will happen. And so those types of investments have been game changers, especially with the advent of AI, which we have in our kind of, we'd like to refer to kind of your companion is Ask Arthur. So you can ask Arthur, as an Arthur Nielsen, to help you synergize a report or, understand what's happening with competition. And so I think that that journey and some of those investments are allowing leaders to make decisions quicker. It's better data because it's unified and it provides a more holistic perspective. So those were some of obviously the areas that really have kind of transformed NIQ. Obviously, Omni data, and obviously in the US, we actually sit on the biggest Omni panel of consumers. That allows us to actually talk to both generations and multicultural and different aspects of that. And I think, you asked the question about the, generational and data. Data has never been more important because it has to inform different experiences as well as kind of the decisions we're all making.
No, well put. Thank you, Marta, for this. You mentioned AI a lot, and maybe talk us a bit through what type of AI enhancements you still expect in the short term with the data offerings you make. And building on that, a question I often get asked about our data is to almost provocatively, can AI replace us? And what would be your response? Why could AI not replace the NIQ or your competitors' offerings or any other analytics companies offering?
Yeah, I think you always need that balance of AI with HI or human intelligence. I don't think that you can replace that. I think obviously asking the right questions, analyzing the data, obviously some of that analysis can be done with AI very quickly and very effectively. but you still need a human and that human intelligence to kind of use that reasoning of applying it, of identifying it. Because otherwise, a machine's going to go, it's only as good as kind of the data it has. And it's almost like that experience and some of those other key aspects really come into that. Obviously AI, and for us, we have obviously huge volumes of different data, because as we have added additional and diverse data sources, being able to structure it and refine it and create reference data, one of the things that we have to do is use AI to do that, just because of the volume of that. And that will constantly that's not going to happen. And obviously AI is disrupting every step of the product life cycle, from how brands research and we provide those, to how they launch new innovation, to how they search for product. So obviously we're working in partnership with retailers and brands of how can you use AI to move faster, to move smarter, to move more efficiently. It doesn't take away all the cost, but it can definitely create definite savings as we look to do that. And so we're obviously kind of continuing to do that. When you think about it, and this is kind of a staggering statistic, is 95% of our solutions utilize AI algorithms. And a lot of that is because of the criticality of converting it to granular data. And it's interesting, and again, kind of being, and I'm sure you appreciate this, kind of being involved with data every day, is the importance of that granularity, because it's those nuances in the granularity that either uncover the greatest opportunity or where there isn't one. So understanding kind of to the depth of what either your competition is doing at the brand level and sometimes at the SKU level is super critical, because otherwise, if it's more generic, like name brands versus private label brands, that's not enough to make a really good decision. You need to go underneath that and into that granularity to really understand what is happening.
Yeah, absolutely. You need granularity and you need to make sense of it, and AI helps you with this. Right. And IQ seems to be now, you seem to be an AI company, and and we're trying to follow your footsteps there too. Yeah. So maybe that's the way to turn this around, being AI yourself. Marta, you mentioned before the generations, and that's something we worked a lot together. We worked very closely with your team, and want to spend a bit of time on our insights and our partnership on this. So maybe to kick it off, just maybe share a bit some of the work we did together before we delve into the client-centric elements of our generation analysis.
Absolutely. And Wolfgang, you and I can appreciate this. We're kind of the forgotten generation. And I think what our report starts to really identify is that if you kind of have forgotten about us, you're losing out on spending that is there for the taking. So if you're kind of thinking about how do I grow my business or how do I sell more, maybe people should consider marketing and engaging with Gen X. I think because we've been the quiet generation, we've been very hardworking. We're definitely the caretaker consumers, taking care of our children and our parents and our households. And so I think it's been an interesting one. And actually, it's been somebody on your team who mentioned it. And I think to me, this was the game-changing statistic, which was there's $4 trillion of spending that has been lost out on in the last 4 years because they haven't been marketed to. And so when you think about the next 10 years or 12 years, this is going to be the generation whose spending is going to be the greatest. As we know, boomers still dominate net worth. Gen X is second, but they're gaining and they're obviously spending, and they're spending across diverse categories. So really understanding this generation is a must.
And how would you, given we have done now 2 reports and 2 out of the, say, 5 major generations in the world, we did also one in Gen Z. How do you compare? Is there anything that changed your mind in terms of marketing and positioning generations if you compare the Gen X work we did with the Gen Z work?
Absolutely. Like for me on Gen X, it's almost more about the immediate and the short term and making sure that I'll call it, we're maximizing that potential. I think for me on Gen Z, they're shaping kind of how we think. They're shaping culture. but they're also shaping the future. And so I think both are important. I'm always a big believer of how do you make sure and drive performance to invest into the future. And I think this is a perfect analogy of that. You need to be kind of maximizing on Gen X spend so that you can continue to invest and kind of be ready for Gen Z as they kind of come into prime spending periods, as they, especially in emerged more Western markets, because obviously, as you know, with Gen Z, some of them have already kind of peaked in certain areas, but in others, it's still coming. I think with regard to Gen X, especially in those Western markets, huge continual opportunity, but also a significant opportunity in APAC. Again, how do you maximize today so you can invest for tomorrow and be kind of, along identifying both are equally important, but for different reasons, and provide different value to a business.
No, you just put it also well, Marta, because you shared a bit the global perspective on developed markets versus emerging markets in APAC. And as Nielsen IQ is the global premier company on consumer insights, I wanted to ask you in terms of generational spending and also NIQ's positioning, how you segment global markets in that context. We also, by the way, just engaging with your Australia team, so there's also some opportunities there. So tell us a bit from the inside how NIQ, US strong company, you acquired my home country company GfK as part of the merger on the basic new path, and you're a truly global company as well. So maybe talk us through the nuances of being a global company.
Absolutely. So obviously, as you highlighted, we did obviously merge with GfK, who is very established in the tech and durable vertical and category space. And so that was something that in combination with our existing FMCG or fast moving goods, things like from toothpaste to shavers to snack foods to beverages, being able to kind of combine that enabled us to view a more total store, provided us a total store read around the world. And obviously a number of markets. NIQ has been in 90 markets, covering 85% of the GDP. So being able to kind of provide that perspective and bring that opportunity is super, has been really great. And it also allows us to help the tech and durables industry, which typically we were really kind of providing great data and insights to, but now we can actually apply some of our other areas, which are really more our solution tools on think of understanding the consumer journey or understanding consumer behaviors and what's changing, or understanding things that where to innovate. And so that has kind of enabled those areas to kind of open up their worlds of how can they use data and insights to make decisions or to better understand how consumers are shifting across generations or across different lifestyle stages. So obviously that global scale is super important because obviously, as we kind of started to talk earlier, it varies from regions to markets. Of what may be happening in Vietnam is going to be very different than what's happening in Australia, which will be different to how different things are consumed or purchased in India. So kind of being able to provide, whether it's a unified view or a market or a regional view, becomes super important to our clients, especially our global ones, obviously.
Well put. And obviously you have all the Fortune 500 global clients, and they indeed are many parts of the world. Maybe that, Marta, is a good transition to what you said earlier, like one of the insights we created with these 4 trillion, opportunity lost with Gen X, which came from our latest Gen X report. And I hope you all viewers can download it both from the NIQ and the World Data Lab website and engage with us. We have done, a number of partnerships now, also with your vertical team on beauty. We're doing one now actually on alcohol, which links back to your first job in the beer data market. You want to share a few reflections on our partnership and the complementarity of our data and insights?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I think better understanding kind of where global spending is going, which obviously the World Data Lab provides by categories with our data about the consumers, as well as the categories of what is happening in performance, but also kind of, so taking spending to what's happening kind of in sales, but also then taking some of the different insights about the consumers from our various panels around the world really becomes quite magical on being able to tell a more complete story, and also identifies those areas of opportunity. What should we be thinking about, and what are the different pieces? So, it's even as we think about Gen X, one of the things that I don't know that I would have necessarily thought about is kind of the spending that they have on elder care. Like I would not have necessarily gone there, but because they're taking care of their parents, they're also spending a lot on education. And so I think it's more about understanding those nuances, that the combination of, as we come together, being able to see where the spending is and what the impacts are on the why they're doing it, or some of those other areas, I think become kind of the magic of us kind of partnering together, and kind of the opportunity that together we can actually create for various clients or prospects in the market, or clients who need it, those insights. So I think it's been it's been great to work with World Data Lab. The data is super insightful and easy to use, and very much complements the insights that we have, and it provides just a fuller, more well-rounded picture.
No, thank you for sharing this, Marta. And indeed, obviously, NIQ with having this hyper granular data across space and categories, and hyper granular categories, and we have a model that helps to forecast on our more macro categories. And you can all see this in our reports and the work we'll do together. Marta, I want to bring it back a bit to the beginning. Also, if you think of the younger viewers or those who may be entry career, why would you advise them to go into data and insights, or what in general would you advise the younger generation if they look for the first or the second job?
Yeah, I think understanding data, understanding AI, understanding digital, how the digital kind of commerce works. I think that is just kind of, I don't want to say table stakes, but in everything we do, it's kind of it's touching all of our professional lives in some way. I used to, when you think about marketers, like for marketers, it was always just the agencies who they really partnered with, because they would bring creative ideas to life for all of us to be influenced on the products we buy. Now it's about data. I always say the dynamic duo is the chief marketing officer with the chief data officer, or the chief technology officer, because the reality is you need a great idea, but you also need the insights and the ability to segment, which you need data for, to be able to reach them wherever they are with what the message they need. And so I think that has evolved. So no matter kind of what area of kind of profession you're going to, I think really understanding the marketplace and understanding AI and the value and what is good data versus not good data, I think is super critical, because as I'm sure you and I are both using AI in our daily lives to kind of make ourselves more efficient. You're only as good as your prompts. And I always say products, when people talk about price, it's because there's an absence of value. And so I think that value has shifted. I think the principles are the same, but some of the criteria have shifted of how we get different our data, or kind of different insights. That has shifted over time. So staying in tune with that, I think, is super critical.
So well put, Marta, and thank you for sharing that perspective for those who still ahead of their careers. Marta, the final question to every guest here is, what's your favorite number? And tell us around the number.
I was hoping you were going to ask that. It's 20 trillion. Yeah. And obviously that's going to be the spending of Gen X as we go into 2033. So 8 years from now. So if you really, when you think about that, you don't want to miss out on that spending. And the one thing that I know we as kind of one of the things that our report highlights is, this generation, we kind of talked about them being the sandwich generation and kind of the caretaker generation. And so obviously what they reward and become very loyal to is if you make it easy, you make it convenient, And obviously quality continues to be very important. And so when you think about that, if you can actually find ways to appeal to this generation, there is money to be had. And over the next 5 to 10 years, that consumption will be hitting its peak. So the ability to maximize that, a lot of times as we talk about Gen Z, the maximization of their spending is 10 to 20 years away. The maximization of this generation's spending is 5 to 10 years. So it's now. So that is to me the opportunity of how do you kind of maximize and make sure you prioritize so that it can actually fuel investment and innovation for the next generations to come. So
well, 20 trillion. 20 trillion. That's a good number. It's a big number. Yeah. Only one person had a bigger number. There was actually Asmita Dubai from L'Oreal. She had infinity. But that doesn't apply to our report and work. So thank you so much, Marta, for being with me on this show. And to all viewers, please stay tuned for the next shows. We have many other global leaders from business, from marketing, from sports here on this show. And it was a big pleasure to have the Chief Communications Officer of Nielsen IQ with me today.